The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Welcome back to the show, all Cherries fans and Leicester fans. Thank you for joining us. Now, before we get going, hit the like, subscribe, and the bell button below. It helps this channel to grow. Now, of course, we have got the Foxes this weekend, just before the international break. A Leicester City side managed by Steve Cooper. Now, before we get stuck into this preview, here's a bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out more about them, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. So Leicester City sit just outside the Premier League relegation zone at this early stage of the season. They've had 3 draws and 3 defeats from their 6 games, but we'll be hoping to get a first win on the board before the Nations League. Don't really care much about it, to be perfectly honest. Now, we do have a special guest, and of course, this channel has been on here before. Of course, it's the channel we're probably our closest to. However, Chris is in Australia, so we got somebody far, far better for you. So, it is a pleasure to welcome back onto Up the Cherries in all departments, from Leicester till I die, Kate. Welcome back to the show, Kate. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Yeah, all good, all good. And of course, a big game this weekend. Of course, our second successive promoted team in a row. I personally think, and I'm pretty sure that you'll agree with us, that Leicester are going to cause a lot more problems than Southampton are.
I didn't catch any of the game in the week, but I was reading a lot about it the day after, and it sounds like, yeah, Southampton really didn't turn up, or maybe that's unjust to you. You absolutely thumped them. So, yeah, I'd like to think we will give you more of a game on Saturday.
My fear about what happened against Southampton and what could potentially happen at the weekend is we didn't really get out of second gear, and Southampton were just that poor, but Leicester, of course, you haven't won so far this year, but you have given quite a few teams some games. So of course, the start of the season, the first game against Spurs, you did get a point there. What did you make of that first performance back?
The first half in particular was really nervous. I think it was our first game back in the Premier League. We had a lot of players who'd not played in the Premier League before. We had a new manager's first game. There was lots of firsts going on in that particular game, and also the weight of expectation and the weight of the world looking at you a bit with this potential pending points deduction, which then didn't materialise. So there was a lot going on in that first half, and it was quite poor. Like, Spurs should have been 5-0 up, and it was a very Spursy performance. I think they went in at the break 1-0. So the second half, though, I think we just thought we're here, we're fighting, we deserve to be here. And if it wasn't for Vardy missing a really quite straightforward one-on-one, we'd have won. So we really fought hard and really battled and competed second half. So it was definitely a game of two halves in that regard. But yeah, we competed. We did compete.
Looking at your fixtures that you've had so far, to be honest, Fulham, you got beat by them 2-1 at Craven Cottage. Aston Villa, the 2-1 defeat. No embarrassment there. And just quickly to go back to the most recent game, against Arsenal, you was 2-2 until Arsenal did get 2 goals in the last couple of minutes. And, you know, a point at the Emirates would have been an outstanding result. Was it like that, or does that scoreline, or did that scoreline at that point flatter to deceive?
Oh, God, it massively flattered us. If we'd have got a draw from there, it would have been an absolute steal. My goodness, the first half was bordering on pathetic. I mean, we got absolutely hammered the first half. It was almost shell-shocking. You didn't know what to make of it. And again, they should have been well clear and managed to get a goal before the break to make it 2-0 at half-time. But I was hoping to go in at 1-0, which we nearly did. But second half was better. It wasn't much better, but it was better. And, you know, considering how steely Arsenal looked the week before against Man City in defence, we scored 2 goals pretty much from 3 attacks, I think, during that whole game, which must have been quite worrying for Arteta. One was a set piece and one was one of the goals of the season contenders from James Justin. So at 2-2, I don't remember the last time we scored 2 at the Emirates, and I think only a handful of teams will score 2 at the Emirates this season. So you just think 2-2 going into injury time. And for me, Steve Cooper rolled the dice and changed the midfield, decided to bring Oliver Skip off and brought Bobby de Cordova-Reid on. I think his argument would be fresh legs, but it don't wash for me, fresh legs at 92 minutes. You need that at 70, not 92. And I think it was a bit disruptive. So whilst the bow was creaking at 92 minutes, Arsenal were banging on the door, and I think we faced 33 shots, 10 corners, which were all excellent from Declan Rice. We were being hammered, but we were holding, and we had something to hold on to. But mixing that midfield up at 92 minutes, I don't think de Cordova-Reid could even catch up with the pace of play during that frantic 5 minutes. And yeah, it was a deflected own goal for the third, which was unfortunate, and the fourth I don't think even really mattered in the end. But yeah, it would have been an absolute steal to get a point, and it would have felt like a win, but it wasn't meant to be. But hopefully we can take a lot of heart, and again, just have a bit of belief. I feel like those fans have more belief in Leicester than Steve Cooper sometimes. He's a bit too cautious, and we're better than that.
Talking about Steve Cooper, of course, and I don't know if you agree with me here, Kate, but I think he did quite a decent job at Nottingham Forest. I think he had a situation there where there was so many players and a turnover of players which was quite ridiculous at the time. Wasn't it about 20 odd players they signed in the first season?
The village, basically.
Yeah, and I think he did a decent job. But of course, Leicester are a lot more stable. There's not that turnover of players coming in. Have you been impressed with him so far?
I wouldn't go as far as say I've been impressed with him, but I haven't at all had some of the fan sentiment who want him out either.
Yeah.
I think the guy deserves time. You know, I keep seeing a lot of Twitter noise saying that he's not won in 18 Premier League games, and I don't really care about what happened at Forest because, like you've just said, it's a completely different beast. It was a different owner, a different setup. The integration task by itself was pretty phenomenal, which you can't achieve to integrate between 15 and 20 players in a season. It's absolutely absurd. And the friends that I have are Forest fans were really actually quite sad to see him go, which is probably more of a barometer of what kind of manager he was. So I'm not impressed, but I'm not unimpressed either. I think we've had a tough opening start to the season. We've got 3 points from it. The only games where we played quite poorly were Fulham, which now transpires Fulham are flying anyway. That's no bad thing to lose at Craven Cottage. And we didn't play that well against Everton, which probably was his most disappointing game. And again, I feel like he could have gone a bit more attacking. So I don't think the same as me, but from your manager, you just want to see them learn from their mistakes, and try and play positive, progressive football. And I feel like his substitution timings haven't been that great. So, but that's all about learning. He's still learning the squad. This squad is still quite new. 3 of the games of the season annoyingly happened when the transfer window was still open or just about to close. He's had a lot on his plate, and the next 4 games for us are massive. We've got we've got Southampton, we've got Ipswich, and then we've got Forest. 2 are at home and 2 are away. So those next 4 games are probably where we'll really see what Steve Cooper is about, because they're our direct kind of peer group, really, I would say.
Yeah, can't disagree with that at all. And of course, the other 2 promoted sides in there as well, Ipswich and Southampton. I'm sure 100% you'll beat Southampton at St Mary's. Just going on to that Everton game, because I did, I watched the watch along for that as well, that Brad did on Leicester Till I Die. Of course, close friends with Leicester Till I Die. But it looked as if towards the end you were going to inflict a 3rd comeback against Everton. They had in a row, of course. Our one was quite special, 87 minutes on the clock, 2-0 down. We beat them 3-2. Then Villa did it, not as spectacularly, but they, of course, were 2-0 down. Everybody was like, what? Everton are beating Villa? And then, of course, they were beating yourselves. And you nearly did it.
Yeah, we did nearly do it. I don't know if you saw any of that game. The weather was something out of Bible times. It was absolutely, I was at that game, and I've never seen, when you have that really heavy bout of rain sometimes and it lasts 5 minutes and you're like, oh, that's thrown it down then. That type of rate of rain lasted for about 70 minutes. It was beautiful blue skies when we kicked the ball for the first half an hour, and then the tides just turned. But the game itself was really quite lackluster, and we were disappointed with that, because they're a team that you should be able to sense blood with. But at the same time, they're, like I said, they're in our peer group. They're fighting for their lives as well. They would have looked at us thinking, well, we could maybe get a point at Leicester 3 if we're lucky. And that's exactly what happened. And I think amongst the fan base in Leicester, I saw a few people say that we were the only team at that point to not put 3 past Everton. Leicester don't really put 3 past anybody. We just need to get a grip of that. Like, we can't be called out for not putting 3 past Everton, who are pretty much going to be hopefully not too level with us in the table. Like, there's an element of realism that just isn't taken on board here. But yeah, it was quite lackluster, and we probably deserved the point, but we didn't deserve the win. It wasn't like we rolled them over. The second half was drab. That was a lot to do with the weather. I mean, it was quite surprising it wasn't called off. But yeah, it was disappointing, because I think we felt it was there for the taking, but we didn't push them. Again, we didn't push them. We weren't attacking enough. We didn't threaten enough. Shots at goal are quite low for us. The conversion rate's good, but the shots at goal aren't, the tally isn't good enough, really.
Of course, Jamie Vardy has already got 2 goals. And need I remind you about what he did? Oh, crikey, we're talking 8 years ago now, Kate, aren't we? Is it 8, 9 years ago when we...
9 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that. Of course, our first season in the Premier League, your second, and then you went and won the top flight. And it's what every football club aspires to. Of course, Jamie Vardy has stayed loyal to Leicester City and has been fantastic, for throughout. Do you feel that he's tailed off a little bit as he gets older?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course he has. He's 38 in January. Pace-wise, he's lost a bit, but he's still what you would call a quick player. What has been really good to see over the years, and it was different from 15, 16, because he was still a bit raw then, but we had Kevin Phillips at the time as a striker coach, and Vardy has openly said since then that he's just refined his game. You know, he brought in some additional qualities, and he still has a lot of those qualities. Like off the ball, he's brilliant. And his touch and his passing is really good, and he can create a lot from that. So he definitely has tailed off a bit. He conserves his energy in games. He doesn't chase after every single dead ball anymore, but he'll still put the boot in when he feels like he should and when he can. So he's much better at conserving his energy, and I think that's why he's still going, because he conserves his energy well. He came into the game late, so he's not like an academy player who's been playing football for 20 years. He's only turned pro when he was 26. So, you know, he's still got something in the locker to offer for sure. And he's still a hassle. He's still scoring. But yeah, he's not what he was, but he's different. He's just different.
I guess you put him in that position, you expect him to bury it. It's just now, whereas back 9 years ago, he would get himself into those positions a lot more. You know, not saying that he would never get himself into that, but I guess he's a little bit more of a target man because of that pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's still got the pace. He's not as lightning as he was over, like, say, 3 or 4 yards, but he's still got it for sure. But I think also as time moves on, the defenders get quicker in the league, don't they? There's no sort of slow cart horses in the Prem anymore. So yeah, he's just evolved really, which has been really good to see. So some attributes have naturally dwindled, like his pace. But he's done 90 minutes pretty much every game so far. He conserves his energy really well, and from what I know, he's amazing in training. He conserves his energy in training, doesn't train all the time. And from what I've read and heard from other players' interviews, like, he can sometimes take a knock and be out for a couple of weeks, and then out of nowhere, with 2 weeks no training, he's back and does a full 90 minutes on a Saturday in the Prem. And people just don't know how he does it. I think it's the omelette and the Red Bull before the match that tends to fuel him. But yeah, he's a different beast. He's not the same as what he was 9 years ago. I can't believe I'm saying it's 9 years ago, but he's certainly got more attributes than he had back then. They're just a bit different.
Jordan Ayew, of course, signed during the summer, and he's played one game so far. It was a bit of a surprising signing for me. You know, from the one game he's played, do you see him fitting into this squad, or do you think he's just going to be a bit part player?
I think he is supposed to be a bit part player.
Yeah.
He's made one start, I think, hasn't he? He's come on in a few games, and I quite like him in the sense that you can tell him and Vardy are like seasoned pros. Like, they don't really waste a ball. They hold it up really well. If nothing's on, they'll comfortably win a foul. Like, they're just those smarter players. And I think the idea would be to bring our right winger Fatawu through the ranks. He's 19 and was absolutely brilliant for us last year in the Championship. Played most games last year. He was a loanee last year. So now we've signed him fully. I think people are really buzzing for him to get going and see the performances we saw last year. But in the few chances he's had to date, Fatawu is quite wasteful. He's quite greedy. He gets too excited. You can feel his excitement, and it's just not the same in the Prem. You can't do that. Someone will have your pants down and have the ball halfway up the pitch before he realises it. So I think Jordan's played more. He played quite a lot of the Crystal Palace game, and by 70 minutes he was on his arse, quite frankly. He was flagging, and he didn't get pulled till 80, and those last 10 minutes was like having 10 men because he was knackered. So I think the idea is for him to be a bit part player, but I think he may turn out to having to play more minutes than we perhaps would have wanted, because I don't think Steve's that fond of Fatawu at the minute.
Mavididi as well is, you know, a great talent, and, you know, somebody who, you know, I think has got, you know, such a great future. He's done well. You know, he did well last season. He's already got 2 on the board as well. Didn't he score? I'm trying to think. Wasn't one of those goals at Arsenal? I think one of those was Mavididi, wasn't it? I'm right.
No, James Justin got both.
Oh, James Justin got both. Yes, yeah. But Mavididi does look a very, very good talent. How important is he going to be for Leicester staying in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have asked me who was the better player last year out of Fatawu and Mavadidi, because they were both our new wingers last year, I'd have said Fatawu probably just edged it, because Steffi can sulk and can be a bit hot and cold. But coming into the Prem this year, he's really risen to the challenge, and he is such a good attacking threat down that left-hand side. And he didn't start the first couple games, and now is pretty much a keen starter, and I think he'll be on the team sheet on Saturday. So he is vital, because I'm sure you might talk about Wilfred Ndidi in a minute, but he's one of our true attacking talents that is in his right position. And, you know, he's really given the fullback something to think about in most games, and his pace is lightning. He can cut inside as well as go round. He seems to be thriving off the challenge, and I didn't expect to see that. I thought he maybe like Fatawu and be a bit greedier and a bit naive, but he's proved me wrong there, really. And I think he was a former player at Arsenal, so he got quite a good response and applaud on Saturday as well.
And in fact, you read my mind. Ndidi, you know, again, a quality player in the Championship. You know, he was outstanding for yourselves, and he looks like one that has made the step up, you know, quite comfortably.
Yeah, so Wilf's 27 now. So we signed him when he was 21, I think. And in those early years, he was not quite the Kante that we'd lost, but he was a flipping good replacement. He was absolutely brilliant in those early years. And then the past couple of years in the Premier League, before we got relegated, he was way, way off his best. I don't know whether it was injury, whether it was personal. He was way off it, like embarrassingly so. And yeah, he had a really good season last year under Enzo. Enzo kind of revamped his style a bit, got him to be a bit more forward thinking, as well as just the destructive industrial midfielder. And Cooper's keen to push forward with that this year. I'm not a fan. I don't like it. He's not good enough on the ball for me. He loses possession really easily. His stats will tell you otherwise. His stats in our team outshine everybody else in terms of assists, in terms of ball carries, in terms of tackles. I think he's got the most tackles in the Prem at the minute, which is a bit weird. But on the ball, when you watch him live, it can be painful. And he has missed some opportunities, not necessarily goals, but he's missed the ability to make the pass to Vardy, or just some of those more simpler, natural things that you get from an attacking player. So I'm not keen on him in that area at all, but I think Cooper will persevere.
Talking about Enzo Maresca as well, of course, he's now gone to Chelsea. I was a little bit surprised, Kate, you know, that he did A, leave Leicester, but B, went to Chelsea, because last season, and you might see this differently to me, I thought you was going to absolutely run away with the Championship. You were in that position at one point. I thought you was going to get the points total in the league. You were absolutely outstanding, and he kind of nearly blew it towards the end. What kind of went wrong towards the end of that season? How did he get you across the line, do you feel?
He got us across the line because the first half of the season was absolutely dynamite. So we had points in the bag, which, if any of you watched the Leicester Till I Die at that point, me and Chris kept saying, we just want the points in the bag. Like, so much of the press had already crowned us as champions, but me and Chris were just not having it. We needed the points on the board, and that's all that mattered. And then I think, which might turn out to be good for Chelsea, but it wasn't good for us. And it's the same with a lot of these modern managers, is that he was so stubborn to a fault. Two of the notable performances in the back half of the season was away at Plymouth and away at Bristol City, and you will not find two more dire performances than that. They were absolutely shocking, and it was because he didn't have any flexibility in his approach, in his substitutions. We blew the 1-0 lead at Leeds as well. Like, he has some really frustrating, stubborn areas, and I think he's so convinced his philosophy works, but forgets to realise if the personnel that he's got can do that. Whereas at Chelsea, he probably won't have that problem so much. So I still think he had a lot to learn, and I would have loved him to do it with us. But ultimately, you don't want a manager that's heart isn't in it with you either. I think Chelsea have took a punt, and it looks great at the minute, but have they played anybody of note? Probably not. So it's working well at the minute, but it's when you get into a sticky spot with Enzo and you think, okay, you've got to do something different now because you've been found out, is where he probably falls a bit short. But I think that probably could be argued for a lot of managers, couldn't it?
To be fair, when we played Chelsea recently, we were much the better side. If we had taken our chances, I think, we would have won that game.
Did
Hands
you
down.
use 1-0 at the death?
Yes.
Yeah.
1-0 at the death. We would have won that game. And I completely agree with you. And I still think that it probably is happening at Chelsea. During that match, did he really change much? He made some decent substitutions, but to be honest, the style stayed the same. It probably suited us. And I think Chelsea, the goal was well taken. However, I don't think the style, changed at all. We still, even after conceding, we're still pressing, we're still doing what we was doing. When we lost the ball, when they had the ball in centre of midfield, we won it back. And I'm sure Bournemouth fans will feel that, I won't say that I'm being harsh here, but Chelsea, with the squad that they've got and the amount of money that they've spent and the quality that they have got, in the likes of Cole Palmer, you pick 5 players for Chelsea, they should be beating us hands down. They should be beating us hands down. But to be honest, we could and should really have won that game if we had managed to actually hit the target and didn't miss a penalty. Let Nilsson off after scoring against Saints. But the other thing I did want to touch upon, Harry Winks, I've noticed he's come in for a little bit of stick as well. And he's a player that, when he was at Spurs, I picked out and I thought, he's a decent player. I've always thought he's a decent player, but what's wrong with him? What do Leicester fans not really like?
I think so far this season, so Winks was absolutely fundamental to Enzo's system working last year. Him and Ricardo Pereira, and he was just fundamental. And he was playing free flowing football. The style was exactly to Winks's strengths. This season he's had to relearn, which I think mentally would probably be quite difficult for him, because he said last year it's the most he's ever enjoyed his football under Enzo. So changing away from that must have been quite tough for a player. I think, well, I'm playing the best football under him, I don't really want to change. But also for me personally, Winks is a person that collects the ball, breaks it up, and then he's ready to distribute and move forward. When you're distributing to Wilf, you've not got an outlet because he's not good enough on the ball. Winks last year had Ricardo Pereira or KDH, who were much better on the ball to pick it up and turn and go. And Winks's job was done, and he'd then protect the back four. Whereas this year, you've got Wilf, and Wilf is not good enough to pick up the ball in quick situations where you need quick ball, quick play, turn and go and get the turnover and run on. Just not good enough. So Winks, I think, has come under some unfair criticism. He's not been supersonic, but at the same time, his work fully relies upon his partner in crime doing their job properly. And Skip has worked really well with him. They probably know each other from their Tottenham days. But I feel like this is, for me, where it breaks down with Ndidi in the middle, because he isn't good enough on the ball to collect and run and distribute to the attacking players as good as what we've had in the past.
Like you say, this is a massive game for Leicester. But of course, after that international break, which everybody's looking forward to, you have got Southampton, Forest, Ipswich, and Man United we can throw in there as well, because let's be honest, they're not particularly very good.
I felt like I was watching Leicester at Man U versus Spurs on Sunday. They're making all the same mistakes we did.
But this is, a critical time. Are you confident that Steve Cooper can get these players fired up? And personally, I think that you're more than good enough to stay in the top flight this season.
Yes, I hope so. The thing is, what we often don't talk about here is the players also have a responsibility to play in that. Like, we didn't sack our manager in the summer, which is really unusual for a football club. Like, we've lost a manager to someone else. And that's quite unusual. It's normally a sacking, and everybody knows why they've been sacked, whether it's harsh or not. You know why they've been sacked. And this was a lot to get their heads around with Leicester, especially if Enzo ultimately left because of the pending points deduction, which he said he didn't know about. So it's tough for Cooper to do it by himself. There's got to be a complete united front. I do think he's got to pick Ricardo Pereira. He's got to pick his best team. But I'm hopeful that he can galvanise us, but they've got to want to do it themselves as well. It's a 50-50 thing, isn't it, really? That's the fundamental of the relationship between player and coach is, do you want to play for that coach? But more importantly, do you want to make it work for that coach as well?
I know we touched on it before as well, Kate, but I was delighted when Leicester had the points deduction scrapped, because it just ruins football. It just ruins football. You know, I was against Everton getting the points deduction last year. I was against Nottingham Forest getting the points deduction because I think I just don't like them. I just don't like them. If that had happened and what was being muted and rumoured, it would be nigh on impossible, wouldn't it, to get out of this situation, considering a newly promoted team take away, I saw, 12. I can imagine that would have been appealed and reduced if they had gone down that route. But it's probably given everybody just a new lease of life, and I'm quite confident without that points deduction, you'll be fine.
I hope so, but yeah, I agree. I think that was mentally quite a sticking point for us, especially in the transfer window. I don't know whether we spoke about it before on the show that I did with you previously, but the cynic in me does say that 3 days after the transfer window closes, the appeal gets lifted. That's not by accident, is it? So the transfer window was quite sticky for us and very much a game of chess in terms of what we can afford and how much money we're getting for this player. And it's become a bit of a farce. So I'd like to think that now that that's gone, hopefully, because there's still some talk somewhere that they could still appeal again and get some points deductions. I don't know, but I'm hopeful that that's given us a much needed boost. And we just don't need to be third bottom. Well, we just need to be the fourth worst team in the league. We're not here to rewrite history again yet. They may be in a few seasons, but there's just one aim this year. There's one objective, and that's just to stay up, come hell or high water, and as ugly football as you get. So I don't think we're in the bottom 3 worst teams in the league from what I've seen to date. But if you can't put the goals away, because we've not been outplayed really. Save for Arsenal, we've not been outplayed over 90 minutes in any other game. It's been quite close in terms of score lines, and it feels like the Great Escape season with those score lines, because in the Great Escape season we only ever really lost by 1 goal throughout the whole season on the losses. So sometimes you just need the rub of the green, like Chelsea got against you. You just need sometimes that little bit of luck to have a turning point in your season, and I feel like that's what we're waiting for, really.
We do play the high press, and that is something that Iriola has done throughout. How do you think that Steve Cooper is going to counteract that?
I don't know, because Arsenal did the same to us on Saturday, and it's very hard to cope with, because that's where Winks gets exposed, you see.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be your jugular for you guys, is to get in those central areas and press, because he hasn't got an outlet. Like I said, if he plays Ndidi, he's not got the outlet that I would like. So the high press, I think we'll still try to play out from the back. As much as Mads Hermansen was an absolute lifesaver on Saturday, there were 2 instances where he tried to play out from the back of a high press, and he very nearly got the ball in his own net. It would have been embarrassing. That was just after we made it 2-2 as well. So he flirts with it a bit. So I don't think he'll change tactics as such, but our passing accuracy has been shocking, quite frankly, the past few games. And that's the result of a high press and just the team not quite ticking yet. So if we don't sort our passing accuracy out with your high press, I could see a goal or two being given away because of that, and which will make it look like an easy goal for you. Do you know what I mean? It won't be like a well-worked move, so to speak. It will be a high press, an error, an unforced error in turnover or something like that, where we make a rod for our own back. And sometimes you just want Mads just to boot it out like we do with these keepers, that we just want them to boot it out away from danger and not try and pass it round the back. So high press we've struggled with, to be honest. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, I'll tell you what, we do this with all of our guests, and you know what's coming. You know what's coming. How do you think it's going to go, Kate? Score prediction time.
Well, I'm going to say a Leicester win.
I don't blame you. Don't blame you.
But I'm going to say 2-1, I think. And I think you'll go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I'm not going to bet against my own team, as you know. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Bournemouth win. I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it is really going to be a tough game. You know, Steve Cooper has provided us with some challenges in the past. So I think it's going to be difficult. So I'm going to go 2-1 Bournemouth, but it's going to be very close. The other thing that I want to do just quickly before I let you go, Kate, is I did this with Brad actually, because Brad was good enough. He welcomed me on the other day when we was doing our prediction league, and we picked out the bottom 5. Now I've got in my head. I don't know if you've watched it. I don't know if you've watched it or can remember, but Kate, who's going to finish in bottom of the league?
Southampton.
Yep, match there. So yeah, I think Saints bottom 19th.
I'm going to say Ipswich.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I went Wolves 18th.
I'm going to say Wolves.
Well, I went Everton, and then
I think Everton are going to get out of it. I just have this feeling.
and just for measure, should we go for 16th? Who do you reckon?
Leicester.
Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I said the same. To be honest, me and Brad's were pretty much, they were identical, the bottom 3, and the 2 just above, because I said Ipswich just above Leicester. We were pretty much identical, so Brad just swapped Wolves and Everton round, so just to be a bit different. But yeah, I think you'll be absolutely fine. I think it might be a little bit scary at times, but I can't see you getting beat by Southampton. I think you'll get a result against Forest, and I think you get a result against Ipswich away from home. So I am sure that Steve Cooper will get you out of trouble. But Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. And no doubt I will be over on Leicester Till I Die at some point, and no doubt we'll be talking. And you're more than welcome whenever you want to come on. Just join us. It'll be a pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'll see you soon.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hit the like, subscribe, and the bell button below. It helps this channel to grow. Do go and visit Leicester Till I Die as well. Make sure you subscribe. Make Chris very, very happy. Do a fantastic job over there. And like I say, they are the channel that we are closest to out of everybody. Absolutely love the team to bits there. So yeah, go make sure that you go hit the subscribe button there. Of course, Leicester fans, if you're not aware, we have had some special guests on this show before who support your football club. Now, we have had David Icke. So go and check him out. He is a Leicester fan. He talks about his career spanning from Coventry to Hereford United to Grandstand and everything in between. And of course, we do talk about what is closest to his heart. We've also had Tom Meehan from Kasabian on. So go check that out as well. Find out a lot more about his stories. also had many other guests. Find out what Harry Redknapp said before the season kicked off. Also, go check out Tiff Nadell. He's been on. We've had Matt Letizia on the show, Richie Neville from 5, Richard Archer from Hard 5. Of course, new single coming out as well as the tour, so go and check that out as well. The Blue Tones and Adam Devlin, again, a tour coming out, so go and check that out. And we've had lots more as well. So go click on the interview tab and go and watch some stuff as well. And I'm sure there's plenty for everybody. But until the next show, up the Cherries, up the Foxes. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us.
The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.